Stringtown Road, Clarksburg. 1B at 16501 Norwood Road, Sandy Spring. It's a master plan site 20A-14. Can I have a motion to approve these hops?
Madam Chair, hearing no objections, I move that we approve the following historic area work permits in accordance with staff reports based upon the record before us in consideration of the recommendations of the local advisory panels and including the conditions recommended by staff. Hop number 1054192 at 23515 Frederick Road to 23200 Stringtown Road, Clarksburg. Hop number 1054359, Master Plan Site 28-14 at 16501 Norwood Road, Sandy Spring.
Do I hear a second on that motion?
It's Commissioner Galway. I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, now we're going to move on to the single hop that we will be hearing tonight. It is item 1D at 22200 Clarksburg Road, Boyd's. Is there a staff report?
There is. This is Chris Berger, preservation staff. For the record, this is a revision to historic area work permit number 956436 for the Cephas Summers House and its garage at 22200 Clarksburg Road. It includes both retroactive work items and proposed work. The photo you see is from 1992. The house The house dates to before the Civil War. It is a master plan site. This aerial is from about a year ago, before the work began. The parcel is outlined in red, and the star is the location of the house. Note the new construction across Clarksburg Road and the subdivided lots to the north where homes are currently under construction. The HPC has reviewed this project a number of times. There were 4 preliminary consultations, and then the HPC approved the HOP in 2021 with 4 conditions. There also was a staff approval in May 2023 for changes to the fenestration on the back of the garage. Staff visited the property twice late last year when they noted the deviations from the approved plans, which led to the revised plans that are before you tonight. These are the relevant regulations. Staff notes that this is a reconstruction, so you may question why we are applying the Secretary of the Interior's rehab standards. And to quote from the staff report from 2021, when this HOP originally was before you, the Secretary of the Interior defines rehabilitations as the act or process or making possible a compatible use for a property through repair, alterations, and additions while preserving those portions of features which convey its historical, cultural, or architectural values. Because the property is a master plan site, the Commission's focus in reviewing the proposal should be the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation. And to further quote from that 2021 staff report, the Master Plan for Historic Preservation notes that historic preservation provides a sense of continuity in time, of stability and durability, while familiar landmarks instill a loyalty to place and thus a commitment to the community and the county. While the Cephas Summers House has greatly deteriorated, staff finds that this reconstruction plan is in the best interest of furthering the wider preservation goal of fixing the history of this farming community in place. The newly constructed house and its environmental setting will be prominently placed on a lot adjacent to the new development to the north, and it will be an enduring reminder of the rural legacy of 19th century farmsteads in this area. So this is a list of all the retroactive review items that are color-coded in red. We will go through the list shortly, more thoroughly throughout this presentation. I won't read them all now. We'll get to them. And this in green are the proposed work items. So first for the site plan, and I'll orient you, this is the front porch of the property, this is Clarksburg Road right over here, and the applicant proposes to grade the property toward the road. The brick walkway will connect from the side elevation of the garage, which is over here, and it'll link to the side entrance over at the back of the house and then curl around towards the front to the front porch. Next, for the roof plan, the previously approved is on the left here, and the applicant proposes retroactive reviews for the redesign and reconfiguration of the chimney. So this is, you can't see it too well, but this is originally how the chimney was oriented. This is how it was built, slight deviation from what was approved. The addition of box vents are now shown on the roof in various areas. The parapet, which you'll see in photos and other plans later, it divides the two different roofing materials. That's shown on the new plan here. And we also see gutters are shown on the plan here along the edge of the roof lines. Here is a recent photo of the front of the house and a list of the retroactive and proposed review items that are visible from this elevation. And I'll go to the plans. The left elevation, again, is the previously approved. Right is what is proposed. Is this application. So what you see here are the changes to the chimneys. Basically, they've been reoriented and slightly closer to the roof edge. The windows now have thicker muntins throughout the house. What was approved was 1 1/8 inch, and the windows that were installed are 1 3/4 inch. There's alterations to the foundation in that, and you can't see it too well, but there's a cap at the base of the foundation where it meets the siding here, and we'll see that on other elevations well. And just peeking above here is the parapet. Steps will be added to the front porch. As you see, they're not on the previous elevation, so that's a new addition. There will not be railings and a balustrade, so you'll see on this elevation that there is a need for more fill to raise up. As you can see, this is the current condition, so there will be a need for more fill here on this elevation. And then we see the gutters and the downspouts are on this revised elevation. Moving on to the right side elevation, this is how it looks recently. And here is the list of the retroactive changes and the proposed changes. And here is the new revised elevation. So you again see the chimney changes, the windows with the thicker muntins, changes to the cornice, which are very slight, and you can see the slight changes on the two elevations, just very minimal differences. Stairway orientation for this side entry, and this is the previously approved elevation on this page. So you see it was going in this direction, now it's coming toward you in this revised elevation. The cap at the base of the siding, again, is along this elevation here. Vinyl hopper windows are now visible in the basement. They previously were not shown on the plan due to the grading there. So the change in grade with the reconstruction has necessitated the addition of those windows. There's a new HVAC unit shown here. We see the box vents on the roof. And here's the parapet, again, to mark the change in the roofing materials. Proposed changes on this elevation, again, the gutters and downspouts. The porch posts here will be wrapped in the same stone that you see at the foundation. And this stairway will have wood balustrade and railing and stairs. And as I said, this is the previously approved. This is how it looked prior to construction. This is what previously approved. This is the rear elevation. And here's the list of the completed and proposed work, which we'll get into. And this series shows from left to right the original house, the previously approved, and the most recently revised plans. For the changes, again, the chimney, the thicker window muntins. We have the, very faintly, the right side stairway orientation is shown here. Cap at the base of the siding. There's another HVAC condenser here, box fence on the roof. Can sort of see the parapet right on the top of the roof line here, roof pitch. We have the gutters and downspouts. Again, the porch post will be wrapped in that stone veneer, wood railings, stairs and balustrade on this porch. Going around the house, this is the left side elevation. Here's the list of proposed and retroactive changes. And here is the proposed elevation. Again, chimney changes, the windows, basement windows down here, and thicker muntins on these windows, the box fence on the roof, the parapet, the gutters and downspouts, the posts at the porches are clad in the stone veneer, and then the wood balustrade railings and stairs on this porch. And this is what the house originally looked like on the left elevation, and this was what was previously approved on the left side elevation. Most notably, you will see that the difference in the grading is changed pretty significantly. I'll go to the proposed elevation here, where you can see a lot of the stone veneer foundation, and that wasn't very evident in what was previously approved. Okay, moving on to the newly constructed garage. On the left is a photo of the front. The other photo is the left side elevation facing the house. This is the rear elevation, and this is the left side elevation right up on the property line. Here's the list of retroactive and proposed items for the garage. And I'll go through them on the plans. So for the retroactive items, the lights were installed on all, or shown on all four elevations now. The eaves were supposed to be boxed in, or the eaves were supposed to be exposed and have been boxed in. The arrangement of the fenestration has been changed on the back elevation here. I'll go to what was previously approved. So this is what was previously approved, and this is how it is now. The siding reveal was to be 6 inches. It's actually 7 inches. There's a faux brick stamped pattern that has been added to the foundation, and the garage door pattern has changed slightly. This was what was previously approved here for the garage doors, and this is how it is actually. So very slight deviation. As for proposed changes, there were supposed to be gable vents that were to be installed. They have not been installed, so they'd like to have those removed from the plans. Concrete slab that was supposed to be at the base of the left side elevation has not been installed, so there was to be a slab here, and it wasn't constructed. I guess it wasn't necessary due to the grade, and shutters were not installed at some of the windows. So there was proposed shutters here on this elevation, and those have not been installed. So staff supports all the changes, finding them consistent with the County Code Secretary of the Interior Standards 10 Mile Creek Limited Area Amendment and the Master Plan of Historic Preservation. As you see on the screen, staff has noticed minor differences between the as-built conditions and the drawings, so we'd like to get those cleaned up with the following condition: that the applicants must provide an accurate set of final drawings before the plans are stamped. Do we have any questions?
Are there any questions for staff? Commissioner Doman?
It is Commissioner Doman. This is a complete reconstruction. And if I remember right, when this was discussed a couple years ago, I think it came up originally, under the guise that it's a complete reconstruction, we were going to require a plaque or something to be put on the house that identifies it as a reconstruction, and that is not an original property. And I don't see that in here. I was wondering if that is to still be considered.
This is Rebecca Ballo for the record. That was discussed during the HOP, but the HPC did not make that a final condition of approval for that HOP. If you would like to do so tonight or debate that or discuss it with the applicant, I'd encourage you to do so.
Yeah, well, I thought we had agreed upon that. I don't think this is a major thing, and I have no problem with the report. I just thought that we should at least identify the fact that this is not the original house.
I remember we discussed it several years ago. I think you should still discuss it.
Mm-hmm.
It was not at that time, the commission did not vote to make that a condition of approval of the HOP, though it was definitely discussed.
Commissioner Doman, when we're done with our questions and comments, I would request that you make a motion in that regard. I think you'll find support from the rest of the commissioners. Any other questions? Commissioner Haynes.
Yes, do we know what the purpose of the parapet on the roof is? I mean, why was it generated to, I know you said to separate the roof's material, but it was not part of the original approved plan.
Again, this is Rebecca Ballo, and I know that we do have a representative from Pulte here tonight who can probably speak to this more technically correct than I will, but I'll give it a shot. Because we have the metal shingles bumping up against the asphalt shingles, the two materials can't run into each other, so the construction of this small parapet that is then wrapped in metal, boxed in, is the solution for how those materials are going to meet in the same plane.
Any other questions? Is there anyone speaking for the applicant at this meeting tonight?
Yes, a representative from Pulte is here
Okay,
this evening.
I don't have, okay, that would be great. I'll hold my questions until they come. Whoever's speaking for Pulte, if you would please come forward and turn on the mic and introduce yourself and your relationship to this project, please.
My name is Bradley Nicholas, Vice President of Construction Operations for Pulte's Mid-Atlantic Division.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions for the Pulte representative?
Madam Vice Chair, just a quick point of order. If he has a presentation or anything else to give, he gets 7 minutes for that.
I apologize. If you'd like to make a presentation, please do so.
No presentation, but happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. All right, any questions? Anybody? Yes, Commissioner Haynes.
Yeah, my question as to the necessity of the parapet, and Ms. Ballo, I think, answered it, but I'd like to hear your question or your answer to that as well. If I am assuming that the roof planes are in the same plane, the two different materials, and there was a need to have a break to, how do we transition from metal to asphalt?
Yeah, Ms. Ballo was correct. That was the solution that we proposed to ensure that the roof continued to be a waterproof assembly.
And it could not have been done in sort of a more subtle way with maybe a metal flashing transition type thing? Seems like a parapet's a lot of effort to make a transition.
It says parapet, and I think we often associate that with something that's very tall. It's a fairly small parapet, and we wanted to have enough surface area to adequately transition it between the different materials.
But it does rise up 4 inches or so above the roof plane. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Radu?
Hi, I just have a follow-up question to this roof. I mean, was that the cause of the fact that the ridge of this back section of the building is higher than the ridge of the main section that had the porch? Because it seems like the staff pointed out that the ridge is slightly higher.
Could you describe exactly the area that you're referring to?
Well, at the intersection between
Between the two roofing materials?
between the main section of the house with the porch and the T or the L, like, I guess, the two gable roofs, yeah, the front of the house where the mouse is now on the screen, if you,
It's that little bit right there.
Right there. Bear with me a second, let me take a peek. Ma'am, I'm honestly not sure exactly how this evolved into this particular design. I think some of it was from my discussions with fellow team members. I think there's a difference between the original house and the additions, and I think that might have come into play.
thank you.
Commissioner Doman?
Yeah, this is Commissioner Dolman. I drove by the house on Monday, and I didn't get to see it. Obviously, you're going to do a lot of grading in the front because there's a lot of exposed, the footing below the decking is exposed, and you're going to bring that up so you don't have to put a handrail up. I understand that reason. Right now, you show the steps coming forward towards Clarksburg Road. Have you thought about doing it sideways, going towards the garage instead of, because when you put all that grading in, you're gonna, it's steep right now as it drops off from the front of the house, and you put more grading in, you're gonna be even steeper coming down. Have you considered maybe changing your access, the staircase to the front porch to the side instead of coming straight off the front of the house?
I think that's a good point. Honestly, we had not, because we wanted to provide that path. And I think for lack of a better term, the normal look to a front porch, right? You usually exit from the front instead of the side.
But you're working with a very steep grade all of a sudden, you know? And now you come down the steps, but then you're gonna have to somehow level out to get a walkway that's level to come around. It seems to me to be a lot easier just to come off the side.
It would be. I think you're probably right. I think in our minds, it was that traditional front porch. We want to come out the front of it.
Okay.
That's
I
what we're
did,
thinking.
and my comment is that I thought you did a wonderful job on it. It looked first class. You know, the windows were nice, everything was done very good. It's follows the drawings, and it looks like it's a nice project, so thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, I will close out because I have a couple of questions. Speaking of the grading, I don't recall the grading being that low in front of the house previously. Why did it drop so low?
Ma'am, I believe it's a function of our approved site plan and where we were allowed to site that house. I think it brought it a little further forward. And as there were also some other grading changes in the area as part of the road that went in front. And I think that just kind of all came together, so it's definitely a little steeper at the front, yes, ma'am.
Obviously, looking at the photograph that's up right now, there is no planting material around that house anymore. What are the plans for planting anything that could buffer it a little bit, soften the appearance?
Around the front porch?
Around the front porch in particular, the front of the house?
At this time, we don't have any current plans, but I don't disagree with you that, some ground cover or something like that could help it.
Well, I think you need to plant some trees back, obviously, and some shrubbery. previously, in the existing condition, it was obviously horribly overgrown, but there were obviously trees also that had been there a very long time, and they're now gone, and it's barren, and especially with the construction, the existing development across the street, it just is very raw and unattractive looking, and it's a shame because it's a beautiful little house. The windows, how did the windows get changed that the muttons are so much larger than they were? Because you had specified a window previously that had the smaller muttons. What happened?
The previously specified window had a significant lead time, well over a year. So we actually submitted an alternate window. Dimensions were very close, and we overlooked a note on the approval that said everything has to be exactly the same, and different manufacturers, slightly different dimensions.
And that kind of also leads to my final comment, which is that's quite a long list of retroactive hops you want there. As many times as Pulte came before us, before this all started, Pulte is well versed in what's involved with working with us and the staff. How did you get so many changes without contacting staff prior to, before them finding out?
Honestly, we made a mistake. As we furthered the documents to prepare them to the state that we could obtain a building permit, right? For example, box fence on the roof, right? I need those in today's codes to achieve code compliance. As we submitted it to the building department, we thought someone was looking at it, and we were wrong. We didn't realize it had to be a separate submission to have a meeting like this today. So that was our mistake.
Well, going forward, for this property and any other historic property that Pulte even comes close to that we deal with, I would recommend that you keep on top of this, Pulte keeps on top of this so that this doesn't happen again. We do not favor as many long list of retroactive hops ever from anybody. If that is the case, can I get a motion? Oh, yes, Commissioner Doman, I guess we need to.
I have another comment.
Go right ahead, please.
For the applicant here. Could you just comment on the rationale for your selection of material for the front porch decking and your selection of material for the columns that support the roof over the front porch?
It was really in discussions with staff and what has previously been accepted by the commission and what meets the character of the home of that time period.
Could you identify what they are?
I believe it's a tongue and groove wood decking running perpendicular to the house, sir. I don't know the exact dimensions. I'd have to leaf through all this stuff. But I know it's a wood decking running perpendicular to the house.
And the columns?
The columns. Below the deck, we're going to wrap them in a stone very similar to the foundation so that it matches. I can't remember what the columns are at this time. I have to take a look through here.
They should be wood. This is Rebecca Ballo. They were
Yeah.
approved to be wood, and I've had conversations with the team from Pulte on site because they were looking at a slightly different
Yes.
design, but my understanding is that they're approved to be wood and that they are installed as wood on site.
Correct. Wanted to look at the drawings before I said something.
Please check that out.
Yeah, they're wood.
Are you sure?
I'll double check.
Are there any other comments or questions? If not, Commissioner Doman, I'm going to ask for a motion, but I would ask Commissioner Doman if he would like to speak to the condition that he'd like to add to this.
Well, can I propose a motion?
Yes, you may, sir.
That part of the requirements for approval of HOP 105, no, it's not the right one, HOP number 956436, also include recommendation that a plaque either be installed in the front of the house or in a visible place that identifies that this is a complete reconstruction of the house and perhaps includes some history regarding the Cephalus Summers home and the history of the neighborhood. So I think a little plaque would be helpful for anybody who buys this in the future.
Commissioner Doman, could you rephrase that to be a little bit tighter and to include the one condition the staff has suggested in the report? Or the one condition, I'm sorry, the one condition.
That a plaque be put on the front of the house?
No, that accurate set of final drawings be included. So if you could just rephrase it as your one condition and the condition as suggested by staff.
Make a motion that we add condition to approval of this, that plaque be put on the front of the house designating that this is reconstruction, and that drawings be provided to the staff indicating that this has been done. Okay?
Do I hear a second?
Commissioner Haynes, I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstaining? If not, then the motion is approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we are moving on from the HOPS to preliminary consultations. The first consultation is 2A at 11650 Snowden Farm Parkway, Germantown, HOP number 1053994. It's a master plan site, number 13/19 Howes Farm. Is there a staff report?
Yes, there is, Madam Chair. Again, this is a preliminary consultation for the House Farm at 11650 Snowden Farm Parkway. The house was constructed in circa 1884 with later modifications through the 20s. Most of the accessory structures were constructed from the 20s into the 30s, and this was designated for both the architecture of the house and for its association as a family-owned dairy farm in the county. We've seen this several times, both as a preliminary consultation and as a HOP, including demolitions of 3 outbuildings. We saw most recent that we approved a sign at the entrance, and most recently we heard a preliminary consultation for a discussion of roof repair. So again, this is an aerial. The area that we're focused is primarily on the left of the screen, which is to the rear of the house. The road, Snowden Farm Parkway, you can just barely see in the upper right corner. So the purpose of the proposal is for the applicant to construct bases for 2 statues on the west of the historic house. Additional hardscaping will be constructed at a future date, and this proposal is to be reviewed under Chapter 24A, the HPC's administrative regulations, and the Secretary of the Interior's standards for rehabilitation. So there are 2 statues that are proposed as part of this. The bases are different. There's one base that's for the statue of Shiva. It's a square. It's approximately 50 by 50, constructed out of concrete and brick. There are additional steeples located at different points in the ground floor level. And then there is another proposal for a statue of Buddha in this round base set in a square. Again, that's just over 43 feet square. So this is, the proposal is generally consistent with the original concept plan that the HPC saw as a preliminary consultation in 2021. You can see, I did sort of blow up the current proposal here to be a little bit larger, but the bases are to the west and to the southwest of the house, towards the rear of the property. So staff finds that the placement and size of the proposed podiums are generally consistent with the feedback provided by the HPC at the June 2021 preliminary consultation. The staff finds that the concrete and brick are appropriate materials for the hardscape features at the subject property. Staff finds the proposed statues, which were shown only for illustrative purposes in the submitted materials, will not overwhelm the character of the site. And I don't, at the risk of getting too far into the weeds, you know, we do need more information about both the podiums and with the statues on top of them, both for viewshed studies, which will be required for HOP. But as far as review of the statues themselves, there are First Amendment concerns, and there are concerns related to RLUIPA, which is the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act. And that does somewhat constrain the HPC's ability to regulate the content of the statues. And I'm going to go over the 4 basic principles of RLUIPA, but I am not the HPC's attorney, so if we do have a deeper discussion, we have one that we can reach out to. So the four bullets presented by the Department of Justice is the law bars land use regulations that substantially burden religious exercise, except where justified by a compelling governmental interest that the government pursues the least restrictive way possible. 2, requires the government to treat houses of worship as favorably as non-religious assemblies. 3, it bars the governments from discriminating on the basis of religion or religious denomination. And 4, it bars the governments from totally or unreasonably excluding religious assemblies, institutions, or structures. In November, we held a preliminary consultation that talked about the degrading condition of the metal shingle and standing seam roof. It had deteriorated beyond repair. Again, both staff and the HPC stressed that it's imperative that a waterproof roof be installed on the house, to, especially considering the work that's already been done on the interior of the house. The HPC concurred with staff's findings that the metal shingles are character-defining features, and the applicant continues to work with staff and heritage areas to assist them with additional sources of funding. The other reason that staff wanted to bring this forward as a preliminary consultation is sort of a larger discussion about the property and its redevelopment. Up until now, we saw a concept for the whole lot in 2021, and up until now, this has been sort of the alteration or modification of historic structures on the property, and this is the first time that we're integrating new construction. So the most sort of the analogous case is the Spencer Carr House, which you see in front of you in the lower right. This site, which is larger than House Farm, was redeveloped to include a contemporary church building. It converted the historic barn into a school building, and then another, I forget how many 100 acres, were converted into a commercial solar farm. So in a recently approved HOP for work done to the house, the HPC required that the owners to submit periodic reports that would help identify any potential long-term threats to the preservation of the house so they could be quickly rectified. In this case, there were known issues with the foundation and in some cases, some small areas of exterior cladding. Those were able to be identified quickly and repaired. The house remains, in this case, the Spencer Carr House remains unoccupied until such time as the church can put it to use, either for religious purposes or as a rental property. So as part of this preliminary consultation, staff encourages the HPC to discuss methods to ensure the protection of the historic house and significant agricultural buildings as the site is further developed. And I will answer any questions or go into any further details at this time.
Are there any questions for staff at this point? Commissioner Haynes?
Do we know the distance from Snowden Parkway to the closest statue, what that relative distance is?
I don't have that, but while the applicant is making their presentation, I can come up with a pretty good estimate using GIS.
Thank you.
If there, I have a question. This is Commissioner Burdett. In many of the master plan sites that we deal with, we've often come across or often dealt with new structures or components added to the master plan site for its new use. And I'm thinking of that school behind a very similar house, and that's somewhere up county as well. And in that situation, it was also viewed that if some point in the future the property changes hands, then whatever additions to the property that are not in contact with the historic structure itself could possibly be removed. So therefore, we did not, put as much constraint on the appearance of those structures, correct?
I don't remember the property, but yes, and in this instance, what was discussed at the original preliminary consultation and what's being presented this evening will all function independent of the historic buildings.
Thank you. If there are no more questions, then I will invite the applicants to come forward. I have 6 names here. I see one of the people is actually on remote. So, gentlemen, if you will turn on the mics, identify yourselves for the record, and then we will also have the one guest online identify themselves after you two have. All right? Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair.
Vice
I'm
Chair.
Pramod Casey, volunteer engineer for NECC.
Good evening, Vice Chair, Madam Vice Chair. I'm Prashant Gangal. I'm an architect representing the Nepal Education Culture Center. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Vice Chair and Commissioner and staff. My name is Prajwal Rigmi. I'm the president of the organization. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You will have, how many minutes do they have to make a presentation?
7 minutes.
You have 7 minutes to make a presentation, and it will be 7 minutes total for whoever is speaking in whatever component portions, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, yeah, I'm here again with another permit application for podium construction. So these are 2 podiums that we're proposing. So based on our original site plan, so these 2 were since our first site plan. So these 2 were in our preliminary site plan. So the first one is Shiva podium. The second one is Buddha podium. So Shiva podium is slightly on southwest corner from the main building, whereas Buddha podium is on the west side of a silo. So as per staff report, the Buddha podium is about 60 feet west of silo building, whereas Shiva podium will be tentatively 100 feet from the main building and 68 feet from the historic barn. So I have very short outline here today. So I'll talk a little bit about existing plan, proposed podium construction, and I'll have some answers for our HPC staff report, and so I'll take some questions at the end. Next, please. So this is, there was a question I see somewhere in the staff report. So we are not proposing any parking areas. So this is the existing condition plan. On the plan, you clearly see there is existing impervious area. So we are trying to utilize those areas as our temporary parking spaces. So there are some impervious areas on the west side of historic barn. There are some impervious areas in front of the main building. And there is a impervious gravel road that wraps around the main building. Please. So this is the site plan that we are proposing to construct. So the first one on southwest corner is the Shiva statue podium. So we already have the Siva statue, so we're not fabricating here. So this is donated by one of our donor. The total cost more than $40,000 to get here from India. So we have the statue on our premises since July 2022. And the Buddha statue, we had that statue since 2012 or 13, if I'm not wrong. So we used to have this statue in our old location in Bailesville. So we, as Madam Chair just mentioned that, in case of property being sold to another owner, so what happens to the new additions? So we took our addition with us. So we brought back the Buddha statue from Bailesville property. So this is a cross-section of Siva statue. As in the SBC staff report, the footprint is 50 by 50 square feet. And there is a handicap ADA ramp on the backside of the podium. So the construction material will be concrete, and we'll provide you the detailed material specifications once the final design is approved. This is a plan view of Buddha podium, which is on the west side of Silo building. I like to correct, this is also 50 by 50. This 50 by 50 Buddha podium, very similar to Siva statue podium. Okay, and here are some questions that I found in staff report, and then I have the answers for them. So as for June 28, 2021, SBC preliminary consultation meeting with SBC, we are committed to follow the agreement that we had in 2021. NECC's volunteer engineers, architects, we are working to develop a final site plan so as all the historical building will have an obstructed view from the right-of-way from Snowden Farm Parkway. So all our new additions will be not impeding or not blocking any view of historical assets. And the other question, the answer to the other question was about the material specification. So we'll share, as I said earlier, we'll share the material specifications once we have a concrete design so we have to calculate some loading for the podium. So once we have that, we'll provide you that details. And so the paving material, I think the staff recommends having either asphalt walkway or tinted concrete. So we agree on that. We will either use asphalt or tinted concrete. So on the report, so several commissioners have expressed their concern about what will happen to the historical building with all these new additions. So, our vision, NECC's vision, is to save and utilize the historical property that we have on our hand. We are the steward of this property. So there will be some only 2 or 3 new structures in the property, and which is most required for our community purposes. So the new structure will never impede any value or historical value of this historical dairy farm. And as a Spencer Car historical property, we are also going to develop a document explaining how we're going to use the building and how we're going to preserve the building for the longer life.
And,
Yeah, so these are some facts, so since we bought this property, we have, flipped the property into a very beautiful locations. I know you are most welcome to, visit our property, so the difference is there. And then, so to preserve the value of this historical property, so we are going to convert a room or two to showcase. We have some photographs, we have some artifacts from the history, so we're going to showcase those into rooms as a museum. So all the visitors, not necessarily belongs to the Nepali community, but everyone is welcome to visit our museum. And our property is open to public. We just opened a trail around the the property, which is just Arden Trail. We cleared the bushes, opened the 5 feet wide walkway. And so we are in collaboration with one of the a nonprofit in Clarksburg, which is Healthy Kids. So they organize 5K runs. So we have collaboration with them. So they're going to start their 5 weeks program in our property from April or May. Next slide, please. Yeah, so for the last time I was here for roofing HOP permit, so we are in process of roof replacement. So for temporarily, we waterproof the roof, and we are in negotiation with 2 contractors. So yeah, there are some delays due to our funding issues and some logistics. So we are on it, so we'll get the roof done this year. Yeah, thank you very much, and I'm open to questions if you have any.
All right, I'm going to ask for questions for the applicant, but I need to remind everybody that we do have other speakers tonight, so there will be no discussion or deliberation. Let's keep strict to just questions. Are there any questions?
Madam Chair, before questions begin, I just wanted to answer Commissioner Haynes' question from earlier. So the closest base will be approximately 650 feet from Snowden Farm Parkway.
Thank you.
Commissioner Pelletier.
Thanks. Can you talk a little bit about the lighting of these podiums? Like at night, are they going to be lit?
There will be no overhead lighting for these podiums, but there will be some like decorative lighting around the walkway and around the podium.
Has that been designed?
It is not in the
isn't.
design drawing, but it's not finalized yet.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Haynes.
My question is about the size of the podiums and what factors, from your perspective, influence the size of the podium.
So there is no hard and fast rule for the size of podium, but their shape really matters. So as for Buddha religion, but I don't follow, but as for Buddha religion, it has to have a certain size. But my friend here, architect, so he will put some lighting on it.
Thank you for the question. As you know, we have both Hinduism and Buddhism in our country, Nepal. And both of them, the way we look to the gods is like we want to have them higher, just like in church and in other religious faith. There's always, if you go and Google the temples and monasteries in Kathmandu or Nepal, you would see them put on a platform, like layers of platform, tiered structure. So that's what we are trying to replicate as well. And the shapes are based on both the religious beliefs. As you know, what is shown in the drawing is what we presented is not clear drawing, but if you look at the drawing that the historic preservation staff presented in the report, you can see the Buddha podium has the mandala shape, and it has a circular because of the nirvana that the Buddhist religion has. And the exactly opposite to that is the Hinduism, which is all square and permanent. So that's where this kind of shapes and sizes are coming in. So for our purpose, what we did was we just wanted to make sure that we are at least a person height above, so we can, if we are to gather and pray to the Lords, then it becomes kind of a majestic view for everyone.
Is there a particular orientation?
Yes.
And I assume that.
Yeah, so it's basically the way the statue faces. That's those positions are kind of written in kind of norms in the religious books, and we consulted Tibetan lamas for the Buddhism and Kathmandu monks about where to put it, how to put it, what to put where, and same about the the priest when it comes to Hinduism, realism. So.
And just one final question. I forget which pediment it is. My apologies. Let me see if I can. I believe it's the Shiva
Yes.
podium has 3 little structures, roof structures, and what's the nature of those? Are there functions about that? Is there any religious significance to those 3 pavilions?
Yes, that's a very good question. I'm kind of happy to answer to that. As you know, when we go to the church, you go to Mother Mary, right? And then there's other figures, historic figures, and other stuff that the people of that faith put there. So similar to that in Hinduism, you may have, if you have heard of it, Kathmandu has more gods than people. So these small structures, it's like you have an elephant god, the Ganesha, right? So there's some, even within that religious group, Hinduism religious group, there are some people who has to go to the Ganesha first before going to any other god. And then there are some civities. So there's a ritual that they follow. So that's why these small structures are there for Ganesha. And then we'll probably have a Saraswati, which is a goddess of education, and a few others that I forgot right now. So just 3 main other figures would be installed there.
Thank you.
And that also, sorry,
Yeah, go ahead.
and that also symbolizes the Nepali heritage. The pagodas that the first architect of Southeast Asia. So he traveled all over in China, Japan. So you'll see the temples of that architectural design, which is the pagodas. So that also resembles the Nepali heritage. And those structures are not load-bearing, so it will have a small statue inside it. But I believe these are not made of concrete, right?
I don't think we have decided on the material as of now.
And also I would like to go back to, may I?
Sure.
Yeah. So for the Buddha, the reason, the location for Buddha podium, the reason that we push all the way back to the west side is because the Buddhist followers, they like to meditate and they need little quieter areas in the property. So whereas the main building, we'll have museum, we'll have Shiva statues, and all the functions goes around in the main building. So we tried our best to push as far as we can, but a little away from the neighbors. We don't want to disturb the neighbors. So that's the reason that we push the Buddha podium to the backside.
Thank you.
Commissioner Doman?
Yeah, it's Commissioner Doman. One question I have is, I remember back in, was it 21 when you came in, and I also actually visited the site. I think maybe somebody took me around. I went around the whole property and looked at everything. And I guess my question is, the original application when you came in, you had, obviously it was very preliminary, I understand all that. Has the height of the podiums and the height of the statues changed from when you originally came in, or are they basically the same height as what we saw back in 2021?
The height of the statue, thank you for the question, Commissioner. The height of the Shiva statue, is unchanged. So it is about 12 to 14 feet high, made of a brass. It's very heavy in weight. So the podium size and the material will depend on that load. So height. So the height. I think we decide the height based on the grading of that will be required when you have a new community center. So based on that future grading, so we kind of want to stay a little above the proposed grading.
And I also think that there was some discussion of how it would be visible from Snowden Parkway, if it would be visible at all. I think you pushed these back a little bit. I think basically you kept the same locations behind the house than what you originally came in, but I think they've been moved a little bit and maybe a little bit farther away from the road. So do you have an idea of how visible they may be from the parkway?
It will be partially visible from the stone end. From the northeast corner, I think it will be blocked by the historical building. If you go further east, so it is clearly visible. And it is slightly changed than the original site plan because our existing location, it was in a way of a historical tree. The tree is there. So we try to, we have to save the tree. So we move a little bit so that we don't have to cut down the tree.
Now, the land going back towards the back of your property, if I remember right, it looked like it may have been farmed at one time, or it had, what are you going to do with the land back there? Just let it go to the grass or something like that?
I mean, right now we have a dedicated lawnmower, full-time lawnmower. So he takes care of the lawn. So if you visit now, you'll see it looks like a soccer field, grass well maintained. So right now it's all green space. We have a volleyball court. The kids sometimes they come and play there. Other than that, so we use that space for our emergency parking because we don't allow any parking at the front of the building. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? If not, I've got one final one. I'm recalling back to one of your earlier presentations that you had quite a lot of garden and landscaping around your podiums. Is that, it's not shown obviously because you're not there yet, but that is still in the plan to have gardens and landscaping around your area, correct?
Yes, we are still on that. So, like I said, we have a dedicated landscaper. We have planted boundary trees all around the property, not all around east and the north side of the property as a privacy. And then we are still on that plan to have a flower garden all around the podiums. Thank you.
Next, we're going to, I have one other speaker listed. Are there others?
That's all we had as well, Madam Vice Chair.
Okay. You can stay there if you want, or you can go back and take other seats, but Mr. Scott Dykes is listed. And if you'd come forward, and again, turn on the mic till the green button lights up, and identify yourself, your address, and your relationship to this project.
Thank you, Vice Chair. My name is Scott Dykes. I am the owner of the property at 11808 Morningstar Drive. I am adjacent to the Snowden Farm Parkway property on the west and southwest side. Full view of the Shiva temple or the Shiva podium that's in place today, as well as the accessory parking that happens periodically. We were in communication with the NECC when they first moved into the area. They extended us an opportunity to come join them. They sent out a letter about adding some trees and shrubbery. I responded to them and never heard back. For the most part, they've been great neighbors. There's obviously some visual character and historical character conflicts from raising a podium as high as you can see it and trying to maintain historic preservation. My house, some of you may know, is 150 plus years old. It is not on the historic register, but it is well historied in Germantown. It's called London Dairy, and it's had several owners through the years. And many of them have tried to preserve it as best they can. And I feel like at this point, we are going to lose some of that visual characteristic and that historical characteristic the further along this goes. I was not aware of the extensive parking and podium that were going to be added. So at this point in time, I'm not opposed, but I am not completely comfortable with a huge visual representation given the number of people that we have seen on the property. I have small kids. We have a somewhat privacy, but there's just a very large open area where you can, visually see everything from both sides of the property.
Are there any questions for Mr. Dykes?
I'm sorry, what's your address? This is Commissioner Haynes.
11808 Morningstar Drive. And actually, a few of my neighbors did not receive notice of this, so I forwarded them some information, and they also reached out, I think through email. I think they spoke with you, yes.
Yeah, we did receive written testimony that was uploaded to all of the commissioners' board books.
So can you pull a map up so we can see where Morningstar Drive is?
Yes, give me 1 second, please.
There was also a comment about clearing the fields. We've noticed recently, I think there was a mention of a trail that was added. There was a bridge put in, I don't know, a few months ago, that none of our neighbors in HOA can't speak to, in the field. The field that was cleared actually hosted a dozen and a half, maybe 24 deer, a few families of foxes, owls, rabbits, you name it. That whole area is cleared now. There is no protection. They have no foliage to cover any of that area. It is, like he said, completely flat. It's not being farmed, it's not grass yet, but it is barren right now, and it doesn't host the animals that it once did. I know this isn't an environmental commission, so I wouldn't have brought it up, but it was brought up.
This is Rebecca Ballo with the staff. Just to confirm, you said that there was a bridge, or there has been construction on the property, so there was a bridge
Somewhere
installed?
along the creek. My understanding is this is a wetland preserve. I don't know who owns it or who's responsible for it, but there was a bridge that's almost the width of a car added within the last few months.
On the subject property?
Correct.
Are there any other structures that you've?
Not that I can see. Like I said, I know when we bought the house at the end of 2021, and I remember when they added the Shiva podium. And again, they have been lovely neighbors. Listening to the music's been fantastic. But it's just in general, there is complete unperturbed visibility from their property over to ours. When people are playing volleyball and my kids are outside, they can converse, which is fine. We love the community. I was not so aware that it was becoming from a community center to a religious temple gathering sometimes I've seen over 100 cars in their emergency area.
Just to confirm again, and I'm sorry, you said that there was already a podium installed on the site?
Yes, there is a Shiva. I think it was mentioned that it was recently purchased. Is that?
I just want to clarify
No,
that.
I mean, there is a temporary Buddha statue that we had in Hillsville, so we brought that back. There's no podium right now. It's sitting on a plat, wooden plat. So, and the bridge that he's talking is not ours. So I talked to the new owner of that property. We met once. We mowed their property at the first time, and so he's mowing his property. So he constructed a new bridge so that his kids can play on the other side of the creek. So we welcome him. You can always enjoy our field. Your kids are always welcome to use our field.
Thank you.
We have the map up now, just in case people would like clarification on any of these.
So where is Morningstar? Oh, I see. Okay, gotcha.
Yes, that's my
Yes.
house right there. Yes,
And-
and there are some two in the very lower right corner of that plot. You can see some shed buildings there. There are a few trees on their side, but other than that, there is complete total visibility from my backyard into their backyard.
And where's the adjacent property with, you were just saying that he put up the bridge over?
Yeah, so in the very bottom of that picture, where that would be the wetland. Any of that brush you see there in the very bottom, to the left of the mouse, go to the left. Yeah, just below that. So I'm looking at the cursor.
No, on the triangular portion of that property.
Yeah,
that's
that whole area is completely cleared now. I'm not.
Yeah,
I
that's
guess
a different parcel, and it's not ours.
clarification is that they did not clear it, but it is now cleared. There is no brush there.
Are there any questions for Commissioner Doman?
I guess it's not really a question, but do you have any ideas that, your main concern seems to be the visibility. Is there any suggestions that you might offer to the applicant here that might
Sure.
make it nicer view for you?
Yeah, and I mean, as far as the view, we're not too. It's not so much the architecture or even any of the podiums that are there or the Buddha that's currently there. It's more of the parking as it expands out, because then my backyard looks like a giant parking lot. I think the trees that were being established on the north and east side. Again, that there was a letter sent out. I responded about October of last year, and I hadn't heard back about any more trees being added. It looks like all of them have been planted. I have seen a few orange flags, but I think adding some additional shrubbery there might help buffer the view. For me, part of the reason I purchased the house is because of the history and because of all the adjacent farms. There's Butler Farm, there's Howell's Farm, there's a number of other farms in the area, and my house kind of fits into that farming history. From a resale value, I'm a little concerned if, I'm glad to hear that things can be changed in the future, should a different property owner come along. But in the meantime, I'm concerned about, the value of my home in that consideration.
Any other questions? If not, yes, Commissioner Pelletier?
Well, I guess this would be more for the owner. Is there any plan to continue the tree planting in this area next to his property line?
Yes, Commissioner Pelletier. Yes, our plan is to plant the privacy trees all around the property. So we'll go up to the creek on all three sides. And the other side, we're not going to do anything because that property doesn't adjacent to any nearby houses. So yes, our plan for this year is to continue planting on your side too.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question also. You don't actually intend to have any parking towards that end of the property, right? Looking at from plan south, you don't have any parking down there because it's so close to your podiums, correct?
Right, Madam Chair. Yeah, our original site plan was to have all the parking, so that's one of the reasons. So we don't want to go close to any of our neighbors because, so our proposal was to allow us to have parking space on the northeast corner of the property, where near that, the white is a car or something, yeah. So behind that area, so we utilize that as a space. So it's such that, all the adjacent property, will have no, vehicles parked or no noise pollution. So all the cars will come off the Snowden Farm Parkway and park right there.
Okay, so parking back towards your property, there won't be any?
Currently or in the future?
Well, in the future for certain, because that's not where their parking lot's going to be.
Right.
Now there shouldn't be any either. So, especially once the podiums start to be built, other than construction vehicles, there shouldn't be any parking back there simply because of the use of those podiums.
Okay.
Parking would be intrusive, and other than perhaps some handicap parking would be the only thing I could think of. But that is something that might need to be discussed.
Agreed.
If there's no more comments, we now move into deliberation, or Commissioner Pelletier.
All right, I have to ask them all separately. I just want to get more information. When you said that you've seen up to 100 cars parked, is it in this corner that you're talking about?
Yes, I mean, there was one day specifically that I would say almost the entire field was filled with cars.
And how often does that happen?
Yeah, he's right. So there was a couple of occasions. So that happens only once or twice in a year on the mega religious assembly. So there was one or two times we had like 50 plus cars. So I don't have exact count, but yeah, there were car parked on the green areas because we didn't want to have congestion on the Snowden Farm Parkway because people need to go in. So there will be no congestion on the Snowden Farm Parkway. So yeah, but that happens only once or twice in a year. So far.
And is that only a temporary fix until you get a proper parking lot?
Correct. Yeah, that's a temporary fix.
Okay. Thank you.
And I would, to continue that comment, I would assume that once you start construction of the podium, it will never happen again simply because you have the podium and your statues back there.
Okay, we agree on that.
Okay, we're going to start our deliberation, and that's when we give our opinions. I would like both of you to stay there in case one of us has. We aren't supposed to be asking questions at this point, but it always happens to get clarification. So would any of the commissioners like to start the deliberation? Commissioners Nessa.
All right, this is Commissioner Nasser. Thanks for the explanation of the presentation. I understand the purpose of these statues, and as your colleague mentioned, in most religions, you want to ascend up and place the gods as up as you can, as high as you can. But it would be great that you kind of maybe provide some elevations or some 3D aerial views to understand the relationship of these statues and the historic property, and also maybe from your neighbor's point of view. And you can, of course, build it as high as you want, but to try to make it appropriate, so it's just kind of not overshadowing the historic property, also the kind of respect the neighbor's property as well. So that's my only comment regarding the lights and other, like the landscape, and I'm sure you want to make it as beautiful as possible. So I'm sure you're gonna have landscape plans that are appropriate, but some views that show the relationships would be very appreciated.
Thank you. Next. Okay, I'll go then. Well, it's good to hear that this is moving forward. It's been a long stretch for everybody. I appreciate that. I really don't have an issue with the podiums construction, and I understand that's really why you're here tonight, is to move forward with that construction. They're quite substantial engineered structures. That was interesting to look at the sections. It's some of my comments are related to the property, not related specifically to the podiums. I do look forward to the development of your landscaping plans, maybe a plan that shows the tree plantings that you have done, include that as well. That would be very helpful to see paving. There were several comments in some of the letters that raise issues that I think will need to be addressed or should be addressed. It's not, some of the questions aren't really in our field to deal with, other than, the historic viewshed and area. But I think they're worth considering. The lighting and how the lighting is dealt with, where it's positioned, how it's positioned, and the fixtures that you use, I think are going to be fairly critical in this, not only for your property, but for the neighbors. You do have a watershed area, and how that is treated. The environmental department will be, I'm sure, have talked with you or will be talking with you about how to handle that, and that can kind of feed into then the existing wildlife that has been on the property and can be attracted back to the property as well. Biodiversity is always helpful, but also just from a simple fact that it's interesting to the community, to your community, and to the local residents to see all this wildlife. I'm telling you, if I can get a deer in my backyard, which is about the postage stamp size in Silver Spring, you can get a herd of deer out there. So again, addressing some of the larger site areas, would highly recommend that you keep your parking away from your neighbors as much as possible, or at least give them fair warning when it's going to happen. And I look forward to Maryland History Day on April 3rd, when everybody can come and visit the house and see this historic property, see the remaining buildings, and also see what you might have planned for it. Are there any other? Commissioner Pelletier.
Thank you. I just wanted to second Commissioner Nasser's suggestion for some 3D views from Snowden Farm Parkway and maybe from adjacent properties of how tall these podiums are going to be. I don't know if that's easy enough to do, that your architect can do that, but I think it would be extremely helpful to know, like, the view shed, for these things. I think the drawings are really descriptive. I think the designs are really beautiful. I just would like to kind of know what the neighbors are going to see when these things get erected. So that's it.
I think that appears to be it as far as comments this evening. So you've heard our comments. You will continue to work with staff going forward. And again, the community is always welcome to give their opinions, and we always are happy to work with the community to make sure that your concerns are addressed. And if that's all, then thank you very much for everybody. Thank you for our remote guests. Excuse me. And thank you very much. Moving forward, we're going to move on to our preliminary 2B at 9832 Capitol View Avenue, Silver Spring. I have two names here tonight, Michael Winfield, Mark Kaufman as the applicants, and for public testimony, Mark Faulkner, Patricia Mulready, and Sherry Zuckerman. We are going to start with the staff report.
Yes, again, Dan Bruckert. This is our third preliminary consultation considering the lot at 9832 Capitol View Avenue in Silver Spring. Again, this is an undeveloped lot. It was lot 13 in the Capitol View Park subdivision, and it's a spatial resource to the Capitol View Park Historic District. And in the 1982 amendment that established the district, it defined them as spatial resources are unimproved parcels of land which visually and aesthetically contribute to the setting of the historic district and which can be regarded as extensions of the environmental setting of the significant historic resources. And this is reviewed under Chapter 24A, the HPC's administrative regulations, the Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation, and the approved and adopted master plan amendment for the Capitol View Park Historic District. And again, this is looking towards the subject lot. This was taken before construction began. You see the house at 9838 Capitol View Avenue was previously approved and is under construction, and this is the view today. You'll note the full sidewalk and curb and bus stop that are immediately in front of 9832, and then this is 9830, which is the property to the south. This is looking at the historic farmhouse, Farmer Brown House. It goes by several different names, but access is provided through 9838, which is also where access will be to the subject property. This is looking across the property prior to some tree removals, and this, again, is before construction began. And this is looking back up towards Capitol View Avenue from the existing driveway. And the subject lot is the one with a star. You can see the gravel drive to Farmer Brown House. And our GIS map is incorrect. The lot does extend all the way to the train's property from Capitol View Avenue. And this is the original plat that established the Capitol View Park subdivision. So again, this is the south of the two houses proposed on the undeveloped lots. It's a two-story house with a garage in the rear with the deck above. There are some conflicting numbers as far as the front setback, but they're within a couple feet of one another, and we can work out those details. This one shows it 29 feet 10 inches. There are relatively narrow site setbacks at 7 feet 9 inches to the south and then it does step in a little bit at the rear. So the HPC held a preliminary consultation for the subject property on November 15th. The HPC found the revised house placement, which is closer to the street than previous, was a significant improvement that would reinforce the settlement pattern along Capitol View Avenue. The HPC supported uniform treatment on all four exterior elevations, and several commissioners found the height of the house coupled with the narrow side setbacks had the potential to loom over the neighboring house and streetscape. The design changes are relatively minimal. The roof slope is changed. The window here was changed from a rectangle to an oval, and the second floor on two of the elevations was changed from single siding to hardy clapboards. This is the right elevation with the driveway in the basement. the rear elevation, and the left side elevation. So the design revisions, again, the shingle siding was removed from the front and right side elevations, so now all 4 elevations have uniform finishes as recommended by the HPC in November. And the roof pitch was changed from 12/7 to 12/6. And this lowers the roof midpoint by approximately half a foot. The midpoint on the drawings shows a midpoint of 376 feet and 0.08 of a feet to 366.54. And the height of the ridge from grade was not provided with these drawings. So again, in November, the HPC found that the subject property is a buildable lot, and the site constraints limited the placement of the house and access to the lot, which are both challenges, which is probably part of the reason why this lot hasn't been built on in the last 150 years. The HPC also found the materials proposed were consistent with what is typically allowed for new construction in the Capitol View Historic District. So staff still finds that the house appears too massive and too tall, rendering it potentially incompatible with the streetscape and the overall district. So staff recommends several changes, including lowering the height and narrowing the width of the house, breaking up the facade to reduce its mass, and this could be accomplished by utilizing something like the double gable that was approved in the house in 905 Capitol View Avenue, or reorienting the design to create something akin to a gable L form, which is what the HPC approved at the infill house at 10201 Menlo Avenue. And just, again, we can refer to these examples. So this is the house at 9905. This extends from Capitol View Ave to, I think it's Menlo is the lot to the rear. So its dimensions are relatively similar to the proposed house at 9832. But by using 2 smaller roof forms, it really does break up the massing and the house appears less massive. Again, this is a slight gable L form for the house at 10201 Menlo, but by having the side gable and the front gable, along with some front elevation reveal, the massing of the house is broken up to a degree that the HPC and later the Board of Appeals agreed was compatible with the character of the site and surrounding district. So staff requests the HPC provide feedback on the compatibility of the height and massing of the proposed house, including specific revisions to improve the house compatibility with the streetscape and surrounding district, and any materials for the parking pad and driveway, and any other recommended revisions. And then what follows is a list of additional requested materials for a subsequent HOP application or a preliminary, an additional preliminary consultation as the HPC directs. And I will answer any questions that you have.
Are there any questions for staff? Everybody still digesting all of that? If there are no questions for staff right now, we will move on to the applicants. Michael Winfield, the agent, and Mark Kaufman, the owner. If you'll come forward, turn on the mic till the light's green, and then identify yourself and your relationship to this project. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Michael Winfield, 755 Jen Drive, Woodbine, Maryland. I'm the representative for Mr. Kaufman for this project and the builder.
You can make a presentation. I believe is it 7 minutes or?
It is 7 minutes. I'm just trying to get that back.
Okay.
There we go.
Yeah, you have 7 minutes. You can make a presentation if you like. You can speak to whatever you want, or you can just answer our questions. Thank you.
Thank you. So as it was pointed out, one of our major challenges is the bus stop on the property. Ideally, somebody living in this house doesn't want to be right up against this bus stop. We've tried to pull this house back, which also helps the streetscape presentation of it if it's pulled back. It works better for the driveways because we have no access in the front because of the bus stop. The bus stop is not a friendly place, as everybody would like to think it is. It gets very rowdy. People are constantly back in the woods using it as a bathroom. So I believe that would be inconvenient for a homeowner there. So we've we've looked at pulling it up, and if that's what the commissioners feel we need to do, we can pull it up to line up with Capitol View Avenue. We've also looked at the words massing, the massive house that is continually referred to. By zoning regulations, we have building restriction lines which we could build up to. As you can see, we have pulled back any overhangs or protrusions that technically could hang over the building restriction line. So we have shrunk the house doing that, approximately 9%. Shrinking it any more with a center entrance makes very small rooms on each side. We have looked at the height reductions. We have reduced the roof trusses, which actually brought the roof down about 15%. And then looking at lot coverage of the house, because that seems to be another issue. I did some research on the neighborhood, and there's an average of houses on our street, ours being 1,790 square foot lot coverage. They go 1,649 down to 1,500. The largest one being 9830, which is 2,414 square feet of lot coverage, which is about 50% more than the average lot coverage on the street. So it is not the largest house in the neighborhood by any means. The trees have always been a controversy. Again, with the bus stop there, we want to keep as much green and as much forested area in the front as we can. I walked the property with the neighbor to review the trees that we were going to take down, and he requested that we save this tree and this tree, which we tried to do with root pruning if necessary, or go around the tree for silt fence on the property. And at that point, the neighbor was content with the tree removal, and at that point, the comment was, I have no further stoppage of your project because it's going to go forward anyway. Just try to save these trees that are next to me, which we did. I've met with everybody down the street on flanking our driveway, on down the road. Everybody that I met with has signed a letter saying that they were fine with what we were doing. I didn't get that submitted in time for you tonight, but I can certainly send it to Dan and Rebecca. So we have made a lot of concessions to this house, and it is a difficult lot. But if you look at the houses that were being compared to the one across the street, they have access from the back of their house. They have a lot more leeway to do things with their house. And the other houses are also taking advantage of being able to hang over the building restriction lines, which we have pulled back into the building restriction lines. So we have made a lot of concessions, I feel, and also dealing with the lack of a driveway because of the bus stop. We've tried to do the best we can to make a nice home for somebody there. And would like to hear your feedback on what else we could do to make this a viable project.
Are you complete now?
Yes.
Okay. We will, Ms. Ballo, we can ask our questions of this applicant at this point, right?
Yes, Madam
Okay,
Vice Chair.
thank you. Any questions for this applicant or this agent of the applicant? Commissioner Pelletier.
Thank you. Did you look at hipping the big roof ever in this design?
Tipping it, is that what you said?
Yeah, just like having it be a hip instead of a gable.
I don't believe
center roof.
I don't believe the front of the house would really allow for a full hip. I mean, it would allow for a partial hip on the top. But the ridge line is still the ridge line at that point.
It is, but the hip would push it back rather than having it come up.
It would soften it at the very peak, that's correct.
Yeah, I think it would just soften the height. I'm just curious if you had looked at that
We have
As-
looked at that.
as
yes.
an option.
We have looked at that, and we have not ruled that out either.
Okay. I think that would help, the visual height of it. That's really my only question. Oh, my other question, I did have another question. Why'd you change the window in the front to an oval from, I don't have the old presentation in front of me.
In the architect's opinion, it just seemed to soften the front of the house a bit because there was a skinny, narrow window, a narrow, long window there.
Okay. It's just kind of odd because there's no other oval windows on the whole house. I do appreciate they changed the siding, but we're doing questions. Are we doing questions or are we deliberating? We're doing
Just questions.
Okay,
Just
thank you. You
Commissioner
answered my-
Dillon.
This is Commissioner Dillman. This is kind of related. What is the surface of the driveway? I mean, right now I know it's like a gravel, but are you going to hardscape it, blacktop, asphalt? What is the plans for the driveway when it comes in?
The plan is to blacktop it, but I would like to research something a little more environmentally friendly to let the water ease down through a little bit. So we haven't made a final decision on that yet.
And that will go to, was it 9830, the other house, 9838, is that the other house? So whatever you do for the driveway affects both the houses, right?
It would affect.
And it's
it
going to
would
go up
affect-
to your property line going towards the Brown Farm house
That's
then too.
correct.
And you don't have to do anything with the Brown house then. So you would be responsible for all that, and you really haven't come to a conclusion what the surface would be yet.
At this point, we had planned on blacktopping it, yes.
It might be nice to see something more attractive, but yeah, okay.
I agree with you, and again, that's something that we're obviously open to.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? If there are no more questions.
I do.
Oh, Commissioner Haynes.
Sorry, thank you. This is Commissioner Haynes. Looking at the building section AA, I know trusses are fast and easy way to frame a roof. But one way to bring the ridge down would be to pull the soffit line down below the 8-foot ceiling height. Have you looked at any options to do that?
Yes, sir. I believe you brought that up last time we talked about this, and we did look at that, and what it starts to do is it encroaches over top of the second floor windows, depending on how, to make any significant difference. We start to cover the windows, basically.
You could lower the windows, you got them at 7 feet, that's pretty tall, that could be lowered down to 6'6", or you could do dormers at the windows. And there's ways around that.
Possibly, yes. I'm not sure about the dormer part, but yeah, I mean, we
I'm
could.
very sure of that. Regarding the width, I know space is a premium, but it's pretty wide. The spaces are pretty generous, that's nice for the homeowners. But it seems as if you could squeeze a foot out of the foyer, out of the dining room, home office, you could bring it in 3 to 4 feet. That would also go a ways to bringing your ridge down as you make the width of the house narrower, the ridge comes down just in the design the way you have it. I mean, it's very large family room, kitchen space. Those spaces certainly. The breakfast room is 3/4 of the dining room, foyer, and office, so there's no really loss of space there, and there's no sacrifice to the kitchen. Family room, that's where the family lives, and the home office and the dining room wouldn't suffer, or the foyer is quite generous. Width could be pulled in, so I'd ask you to look at that. Have you thought about some of the two examples that staff showed? And maybe the front door shouldn't face the street. Maybe it should be facing the driveway so that you could maybe offset the two bays of the dining room, and the home office could push and shove and offset so that you would then begin to decrease the street-facing elevation.
With you, with your first comment about making the house a little more narrow, you also have to look at the second floor. It does impact the second floor. More of the master suite area to the hallway becomes narrow, or the rooms become much smaller.
Not much. They're still generous rooms.
I mean, building restriction lines are there. I mean,
Yeah, those are
houses that we-
maximums. Those are maximums.
There are maximums without overhangs, which we pulled back our overhangs to take care of that. And if you look at the house across the street, I believe it's 05, same thing, they are maxed out to the building restriction lines with overhangs. So we did try to pull it back in. And to your second comment about the door on the side, back 50 years ago when I brought this to the county in the first place, we had the door to the side with a side load because of the way everything is set up. And they asked us to switch everything to the front for it to look more compatible with the neighborhood, which we have.
Well, maybe we shot ourselves in the foot on that one.
If there are no more questions, you just answered the one I had, which is, why do you have a door on the front when you've got the bus stop there and a porch there? And more to the point, the porch, which they're never going to use that porch set on with a bus stop there. But I was going to ask why you don't flip the stair and the main egress, but you just answered that, so I will say.
Yes, ma'am, and we addressed that last time I was here. Our original was that house was sideways because of the bus stop, to try to avoid all that.
Yeah.
This is Rebecca Ballo with the staff. I just want to make clear for the record, when the applicants come to us, in the beginning, and we give a lot of design suggestions, and this is an iterative design process. So I do not want any impression to be that because, we made some design suggestions about how to make the house compatible with the streetscape and the neighborhood, that if the house needs to be made more compatible with the door moving another way, again, this is the staff recommendation that's not set in stone. I think the stronger staff recommendation that has also carried through is about the height, size, and massing of the house that remain unaddressed. So I do not want the impression to be that this has to get hung up on the front door, because that was absolutely not our intent. Just make that clear.
Thank you, Supervisor Ballo. Any last questions? If not, we're going to move on to the other comment, or the public testimony. And I have three names: Mark Faulkner, Patricia Mulready, and Sherry Zuckerman. And if there's anybody else that's requested to testify, please come forward. And you all can come forward at one time. So you'll sit down in front of a mic and turn it on so the light is green, and then identify yourselves and your address and your relationship to this project. And why don't we start over here?
No, you should start with
Over, I will start over there at that end of the table, sir. Mr. Faulkner, I assume.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah, good. My name is Mark Faulkner. I own 9830 Capitol View Ave. Pleasure to be here. Thanks for listening to our notes this evening. 3 minutes, yeah?
3 minutes, please.
Sensitivity is a word that's used in the historic text. So is harmony, so is maintain character, so is preservation of the character as well. That all applies to the natural environment and the built environment. It's a relationship between the two. It's a relationship between the size of the house relative to the natural landscape. It's funny, I reread those texts every time we have one of these meetings, and every time I read the sector plan, I get a little more confused about how we're ending up where we are. I don't think the previous building was sensitive. I don't think this application is sensitive to those qualities that are listed in that text. As I noted in my comments that I provided all of you or provided staff a couple days ago, I am mostly in agreement with the staff report in terms of the comments that have been made in terms of trying to reduce the size of it, going on a diet, and bringing the size down. To further add on to that, I think my concerns would be any additional preservations and protections of trees in relation to the massing. The two go hand in hand because it's so wide, because it's big. It really does put pressure on it. I do know that there are some trees in the middle of the site that are a challenge. That's obvious, but there are some around the edges that are definitely, worth saving. So there's a number of comments there. Yes, I did walk the site with Michael Winfield. How you doing, Michael? And we did talk about saving some areas. I was very surprised that all the American holly trees were chopped up. I was surprised that a simple passive conversation was not memorialized in any way with any additional documents representing what the tree plans are in terms of what we're saving, what we're preserving, to be discussed with everybody in the open. So building on the size of the house, I think there's qualitative and quantitative items with it. Being qualitative, it looms over, it has a presence. The qualities of the district are being open. It's a combination of open fields, landscape, trees. When you have large double-height houses on narrow lots, they loom over you. There's a sense of claustrophobia. It just changes the character substantially. In terms of Mr. Winfield's reference to the size of the house, I think he's probably accurate in terms of the lot coverage of my property, but the difference is it's a single story, and it is almost half of the amount of area as the house being proposed. And that double height presence looms over the tree canopy, and it challenges it and it distracts from it. Was that my timing?
Yes, it was.
I wanted, okay.
So we'll move on to you if you'll identify yourself, your relationship to the project, and then you can have your 3 minutes of comments.
Okay. I would like to defer most of my time to Mark, because everything he said I agree with. My name is Sherry Zuckerman. I live across the street, right behind the Victorian that faces this 9832. And I'm also president of the Civic Association, so I'm here on the behalf of myself as well as the community.
Okay. Mr. Faulkner, I believe you have probably about 2 more minutes.
Thank you, Sherry. That was very kind. Just going back to those qualitative and quantitative aspects of the neighborhood, right? The qualitative aspect of it is that, there's spacing between a lot and the trees in between. The referenced projects in the staff report are completely different contexts, right? The one on Capitol View Ave, you saw in the picture, the top of the roof aligns with the neighboring historic building. There's a relationship there that's maintained. The one on Menlo, for example, has very gracious setbacks to the neighbors, 20 or 30 feet. I don't know the exact difference, but you can just tell it allows for that spatial resource to continue through the space. So there's differences when we look at those projects as reference points. For all projects on these 50-foot lots, they've all been kind of single story. My lot is 75 feet, also a single story. So this double height house with a very large roof is an outlier. And again, it just puts further pressure on it. I mentioned this confusion I have. I read the text, and I know I kind of took this oath when I came to the neighborhood that I need to preserve and protect my house. I'm not going to make any huge changes. I hope to leave it in a better state whenever I pass on. And the size of it is just concerning. And again, it's large. I think if you compare usable square footage, it is, in comparison, almost double the usable square footage of my house. In terms of the reference side porch, I already presented with Mr. Winfield a whole set of plans for an alternate building where you could use a side porch. So I know this well as an architect, an urbanist. I kind of have those eyes where I can see all that very clearly and very quickly. So yes, I believe that's absolutely possible, and I don't know what the resistance is fully. I've said it before, I do agree with the house placement. I believe it's in line. And I also want to say, I respect builders. I mentioned that before. We're bringing in, this is the place to bring neighbors and people to the neighborhood in areas of mass transit, and it's a developable lot, but it should be a developable lot in the spirit of the Capitol View Ave Sexter plan. I could go on, but I think that's just about through. And if you want to add anything, Sherry.
No, thank you.
All right, and you're our last speaker.
Hi, I'm Pat Mulrady. I live at 10233 Capitol View Avenue in the fourth oldest house in the Capitol View Park. Yes, I'm not immediately adjacent, but I came to show that this is not just a not in my backyard concern, but it's a concern of the entire neighborhood to keep the structural integrity and appearance and feel of Capitol View Park intact. The Victorian, which was mentioned, first of all, I agree with what they said, and what Sherry wrote to you. I haven't read the other document. But the Victorian, which was mentioned, is, to my knowledge, the only building that Capitol View, which you used to be able to see the Capitol from the entire length of the road, it's the only place that you still could. The height of this new house, if it's constructed close to the road and is as tall as in the plans, could possibly obstruct that. And I think that would, as a historic preservation specialist, I would think that was sad. I agree the house is planned as way too big, and I'm new to this, so I don't really understand why it was moved back towards the road. If I was living there, I wouldn't want, there's a bus stop in front of my house without the shelter, and it's annoying to have it there, and we're set back 40 feet. So I'm also very concerned about the trees, and I would suggest, first of all, maximum use of some different thinking. For instance, some of the trees are native trees. They're right close to the road and close to where they want to build. Perhaps those could be dug up. They're smaller ones, dug up and moved to other places on the lot. Or neighbors could come and take them and plant them in their own yard. I know Montgomery County has a tree planting program. I've signed up for that, and they've told me it'll be a year or two before I can have another tree, even though I already have lots. So it's just, maybe that's a different way of saving the environment a little bit. I think that Parks and Planning should provide a forester and arborist of their own to assess this, not rely on the builder's arborist. And also, water retention is a huge issue in Capitol View Park. It doesn't come up very often. It does on my end of the road because they built a development in the middle of what had been a lake way back when, and streams. And every time it rains hard, like it's supposed to this weekend, the pumps start going off in the back. Also, some builder built on what we call alternate Menlo, and that's caused flooding in those people's backyards. So, excuse me, I think it would be imperative to have that measured. And I'm sorry, I can't see. Oh, I'm up. Okay.
Thank you very much. So now, if there are any questions for the public testimony, Commissioner Dillman.
Yeah, this is a question for Mr. Faulkner. Question came up about the front entrance, and I understand why it's facing frontward now, but would you be against having the entrance to the side, or do you feel that the street view with a front entrance is more important for this particular house, or would you be agreeable, and you think the neighbors would be agreeable to a side entrance for this particular house?
Thank you, Commissioner Dolan. Just to make it clear, where the entrance is probably the least of my worries. That's not the concern I have. The concern I have is it's a very high massing that impacts the view of the tree and the width of the house. I suggested to the applicant putting a side entry. As an architect, it makes all the sense in the world. You're going to park your car in the back. You're going to go in the front door. If you have any neighbors or guests, they're going to park in the back, go to the side door. Nobody's going to use the front. It's going to become useless. It just makes all the sense in the world to put it on the side. But again, that's not my primary concern. It's really the overall height. Thank you.
I mean, this basically almost like going back to square one or something, it seems to me. I mean, there's a lot of redesign. I mean, I have no problem. I think a side entrance makes sense for everything that you just said, If you have visitors coming, they're going to come in through the back. They're not going to use the front door, and basically useless. I mean, I would be, I hate to say that we need to have another preliminary, but I would like to see how this would look. I would like to see a drawing or something that actually addresses the side entrance. So that's my point.
Any other questions? No, I think you made your cases very well. Thank you. We'll move on to deliberation. Oh, wait. Yes, sir.
The applicant or the representative has an opportunity to respond or rebut any testimony before
Okay.
deliberations.
Please come forward and have your opportunity to respond.
First, I wanted to respond to the trees again. I did reach out to Park and Planning, and the forester said that they have no jurisdiction over this property because of the year the lot was cut. So they did not offer any input and said that they have no reason to be to the property to review the trees. We have selectively taken out dead trees at this point. Other than that, as I've said probably 50 times in this room, we are very aware of the trees and committed to saving the trees that can be saved. As far as the frontage, I mean, I keep hearing that it would be nice if the house was pulled back, which is what we've asked for time and time again. I think that helps the streetscape a little bit. I think it helps the treescape a lot. As far as redesigning the house at this point, I mean, we went off of recommendations from the county, recommendations from the commissioner. And I mean, I don't have tens of thousands of dollars to throw at coming back to submit another idea at this point. I think what we have is workable, tweakable to make everybody happy. And as far as expectations of moving in the neighborhood, I know Mr. Faulkner bought the house off of George Carr, who was a friend of ours. So I'm pretty sure Mr. Faulkner was aware of there was going to be houses built there when he moved in, that it wasn't just going to be a vacant lot to enjoy forever. And as I've told him before, that vacant lot is for sale if you want to enjoy the scenery that's there. But again, we have tweaked and tweaked and tweaked this design with trying to keep a nice home for somebody. That's all.
Any questions? Oh, Mr. Faulkner?
Mr. Carr is a great previous owner, and I consulted with him many times about this as well, and I wish he could provide his knowledge of it since he was owner for about 30 years. I think there is probably some recognized dispute about house placement, and I know Patricia said that as well. And unfortunately, I think from my perspective, I am okay with the location. But I have studied it in a way where I think some of the critical trees can remain in its current location. I perfectly knew that there would be developed lots here, and it's kind of that pastoral backyard that is really the resource that you kind of learn to love, right? I'll never see a sunset over the horizon because of that 40-foot house that was built at 9838 ever again. And, there's a reason why I think there's in alignment to where it should be now. But I do think, and I know because I've studied it, that trees can be maintained at its location where it is adjacent to the other properties. And in terms of revisions, I kind of had the opposite opinion. I've kind of felt like it's been the exact same thing every time. Changing siding is not really a revision, but that's a opinion. Thank you.
Okay, any final questions? If not, we will move into our deliberation. And would somebody like to start this? Yes.
Commissioner Galway. Let me move a little bit closer. We were asked to really evaluate the height, the size, the massing, and the word that comes to mind is compatibility. And I think I know, Mark, your concerns about the building itself, and when I look at the site, and there's a 7-foot setback on either side, and so in terms of the rules, they're playing by the rules, I have to admit. We had a conversation initially when it was brought to us, and we were asked about the placement of the home. And when you go down the street and you kind of sort of see the front edge of the homes as you drive down the road, excuse me, down Capitol View, it seems appropriate that the house be pulled at least pretty much in line with the rest of the homes. Now, there are 3 dimensions on the plans. Currently, I saw a 33.6, and then there's 2 that are very close, one at 29.10 and one at 30 feet, 6 inches. It would be nice to understand exactly what that dimension is. I know it is close to that bus stop, but I think the location of the home makes sense in terms of compatibility with the other homes. So I certainly continue to support the location with just kind of understanding that dimension a little bit better. But when I look at the home, and if you could put up, staff, if you could put up slide 241 for everyone. I look at the streetscape of the other homes. It's the streetscape elevation. I may have the wrong number, sorry. Oh, the report's different. This would be the one with the elevations of all the homes down the street.
Yep, you'll just need to give me a second.
Yeah, sure. Take your time. When I start to look at these homes, whether you go down the street, in person, or whether you look at it, even on Google Maps, that you get a sense that these are all generally they're smaller homes along the street. There you go. And what I sort of imagined is, what if 9832 was not there, and we took the 9900 and we moved it into its place between your home, Mark, and 9830 and the newer one that's under construction, 9838. I find that I would still feel that the massing, even with that much smaller single-level home, given the constraints of that site, given that it's being built appropriately with the setback, it's still tight. And so when I look at this home, I'm having difficulty thinking that tweaks, changing the ridge by 6 inches or even tightening it up, it just does not feel, in my opinion, compatible with the rest of the neighborhood. I do think the massing, and it's not a matter of the square footage of the home, but it's just the overall size as you drive down a street. It just seems to be too large. There's a lot, and this might just be graphics, but there's a lot of things going on in that front elevation in terms of the way that it's drawn, and it's just overpowering. It's overburdening, and it just seems like it's too much for that house in that particular location. So, in terms of compatibility, I don't think we're there. In terms of the massing, the size, the height, I think it is, in my opinion, it's just awfully large home for this particular location. And that's my comments. Thanks.
Additional comments, commissioners? If not, I'll give a few comments. I agree completely with Commissioner Galway. I don't find the current massing of this house at all compatible to the community. It is overwhelming its adjacent neighbor at 9830. This is a community, especially on the strip, of smaller houses, and there is nothing wrong with a smaller house. I understand and appreciate that you cannot get full monetary value unless you max everything out, but we are in a historic district. It is a tight site, and we are looking for compatibility. So you do have layers of issues that you have to deal with, and maxing out is not at the top of the list, unfortunately. Now, we have offered many suggestions about how to minimize the massing or the appearance of the massing of this project, and as other commenters have said, tweaking the siding isn't a change to that. It is tweaking an appearance. It's not dealing with the massing issue. And it concerns me, the massing of the house and the plan of the house and the size of the house. I think you really need to reevaluate your plan, and I got to tell you, that front porch and the front entry, no one's ever going to use that front entry because they're not going to park near it. And in my community, there is a house that predated the metro stop in front of it, the bus stop. And the owner of that house came to the civic association, my civic association, multiple times complaining because of the people waiting for the bus would come up onto his porch and sit on the porch, or in inclement weather, hang out under his porch while they waited for the bus. This is a private residence. He finally had to fence his front yard and driveway in completely because people were using his porch to get out of the rain. You need to keep that in mind, that this porch, this entrance, is going to be very close to that bus stop, and if you don't create a barrier of some sort, then they're going to use your porch. There's a possibility that they very well would seek refuge in a rainstorm or a snowstorm on that porch on private property. And I think the simplest answer is to flip the stair and the front entry. And I understand that the grade creates problems for that, but I think the eventual owner of this house will find a side entry much more useful than it will the front. And I think you can do something to the front of the house to make it less obvious that it is, it can have balance, it can have proportion, it can have the windows, the bays, and it can be a nicer looking street frontage, and possibly even minimize the size of it, because you don't need to, at that point, have to have the front door with two side lights on it. But I hear the adjacent neighbors' concerns. I feel for them because I wonder how you can get possibly any sort of planting in between his house and the new house on your property, some tree planting at all that could survive without completely destroying the foundation of this new house to be constructed. You're only going to be able to get small shrubs in there. So yes, he will have this big, massive house looming over his house. And, frankly, the massing is incompatible with the adjacent neighbor and with the other houses along the street. And those are my comments. So, Commissioner Pelletier.
Thank you. I hear all the concerns. The tree issues, trees grow. I mean, plant more trees. I don't have an issue with the trees. And the front door, I don't think, it sounds like that's not the neighbor's biggest concern about where the front door is. I mean, I agree with what everybody's saying. I would move it to the side, but in looking at the plan, and looking, I've just lost it here. Hang on a second. I was looking at the plan. I mean, it's a nice house on the inside. There we go. Well, I lost it here. Okay, but like I look at the room sizes. I mean, besides the sort of the massive family kitchen room area, which I know is where everybody's going to be hanging out, the rooms aren't excessively big. Like there's a lot of them, but I don't feel like, I don't know what I'm trying to say. I think it's a nice house, and I think it's easy to say in these hearings, like, you got to build a smaller house on this lot. But I think economically in this area, that is it's a very difficult thing to actually do if you're a developer. But what I do see in the elevations is a lack of imagination in massing this thing. Like, it could be this height at the front, and it could step down towards the back. I'm particularly struck by some of these graphics that were sent. Hang on, let me go back to my notes here. No, that's not it. Where is it? Capital, is this it? The massing that you sent. You live to the left, right? So you're showing the massing of the house that you're looking out. Yeah, where is that? I'm trying to find it. I was just looking at it. Oh, it's in the testimony, right? Yeah, here. Okay, so this front side yard view from 9830, I don't see why there couldn't be some differential between the first floor and the second floor, and maybe the house is taller in the front, and there's ways to kind of step in and reduce the massing from the neighbor's view without impacting the plan so much. It's a big box, and it's a great plan inside. I think it would be a great house. Just looking at the plan, I would love to live in this house, but I think the massing just doesn't. There isn't a lot of a thought given to the character of the neighborhood and the like how old houses look. Some of the examples that that staff gave for newer houses around the neighborhood, that break up the gables, that break up the mass, that push some to the front, some to the back. It's a big box with a few bays on it. And I wouldn't ask you to shrink the house if you can. I think the way that it is now as a big box, yes, you have to shrink it down to be a smaller box. But if you could go back and just review like what this massing could be. I have this exact issue at my house right now, and they are building an enormous 2.5, 3-story thing that's set far back from my house so that when I'm in the backyard, it looks like there's a cruise ship parked next door. I'm not in a historic district. It's within code. There's nothing that I can do. And this house is the same. I mean, you're honoring the setbacks. You've talked about the trees. You've talked to the neighbors. I think you've done everything right. What I don't think is happening is a little bit of ingenuity in how to break up the outside of the house. And I just feel, I don't want to say go back to the drawing board and redesign the house, because I know that's completely unrealistic. But I think a big siding box, there's a lot that you can do with it to, you might have to move some things, shift some things around in the plan a little bit. Maybe not every bedroom is 12 by 12. Maybe there's some, little rooms for the small children or whatever. But I just think there needs to be a little more thought paid to the exterior and how specifically this neighbor is going to see this house. The other side's not such an issue because the driveway is there, but this side of the house, I don't think enough attention has been paid to the massing. So that's my thoughts. Thank you.
Any additional comments, commissioners? Okay, if that's it, then we're done. Okay, so we've given you the few comments that we got. We've told you that we still think that it's not there, whether it's the massing, whether it's the set, how to show some ingenuity on the housing to make it less of a big box. I do rather like the cruise ship parking. I will, actually. We don't mean to be flippant, honestly. But I think we're going to need another preliminary on this because I don't think you're there yet with this house. And I think you need to work with staff to work to see how you can take what you have and find some ways to minimize some of the spaces within it, whether it's, reducing some of those walk-in closets, if that's what it takes, or taking off a bay window, somehow to pull it down or pull it back or just vary it enough so it's just not a big wall with a lot of windows in it. And then also you need to work with that, what happens on the front, because whether the front door and porch is there or not, there's going to be an issue with that bus stop right there. And that your owner's going to need to address that as soon as possible once people move in the house. Whoever owns that house is going to be dealing with that issue. So work with the staff, and we will see you again. Moving on, we have the minutes of January 10th, 2024. Did anybody read the minutes this week? Commissioner Radu, you read the minutes. Would you like to make a motion?
Yes. I would like to move that we approve the minutes for the January 10th meeting.
Do I have a second for approving the minutes?
It's Commissioner Haynes, I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The minutes of January 10th are approved. Moving on to item 4A, commission items, Tacoma Park Minor Master Plan Public Hearing at Tacoma Park Middle School. Would you like to just say what I just said?
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair Burdett. So the Tacoma Park Minor Master Plan is before the County Council. Planning staff and the planning board participated in a bus tour with the County Council just this past Tuesday, where we toured them around the plan area. They've had their work session. The public hearing is tomorrow night, which will be followed by at least 3 work sessions at the PHP committee, and then on through the public process with the council, hopefully to approval this winter. But as part of that, staff is seeking a motion from the HPC to approve sending a letter to the county council with your public testimony on the master plan amendment. Staff is proposing a letter very similar to the one that you submitted to the planning board for your public testimony.
That all sounds very good. Good plan. I would like to make a motion that the staff prepare a letter to send to the county council, very closely aligned with the original testimony by Vice Chair Burdett, to send to the county council and any of the commissioners who would like to be in attendance tomorrow night may do so voluntarily. So a motion, yes. Do I have a second?
This is Commissioner Pelletier, a second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The motion passes. Staff items.
No staff items this evening.
Then this meeting of January 24th, 2024 is adjourned.